Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. All right, so I just put the verse in the chat box that we're starting with. We're actually doing verses 36 through 38, and this is Canto 4, chapter 8. All right, so we'll read through the verses first. My dear Lord, this is Dhruva Maharaj speaking, and he's speaking to Narada Muni. My dear Lord, I am very impudent for not accepting your instructions, but this is not my fault. It is due to my having been born in a ksatriya family. My stepmother Suruchi has pierced my heart with her harsh words. Therefore, your valuable instruction does not stand in my heart. O learned Brahman, I want to occupy a position more exalted than any yet achieved within the three worlds by anyone, even my father and grandfather. If you will oblige, kindly advise me of an honest path to follow by which I can achieve the goal of my life. My dear Lord, you are a worthy son of Lord Brahmā, and you travel playing your musical instrument, the vīṇā, for the welfare of the entire universe. You are like the sun, which rotates in the universe for the benefit of all living beings. Okay, so I'm going to go back to verse 36 for the purport that we'll be focusing on today. So I'll chant the verse first. Atapi me vinistasya kshatram goram upeyushaha surucha durvachobane nabine shrayate hridi. My dear Lord, I am very impudent for not accepting your instructions, but this is not my fault. It is due to my having been born in a kshatriya family. My stepmother Suruchi has pierced my heart with her harsh words. Therefore, your valuable instruction does not stand in my heart. Purport. It is said that the heart or mind is just like an earthen pot. Once broken, it cannot be repaired by any means. Dhruva Maharaj gave this example to Narada Muni. He said that his heart, having been pierced by the arrows of his stepmother's harsh words, felt so broken that nothing seemed valuable but his desire to counteract her insult. His stepmother had said that because he was born from the womb of Suniti, a neglected queen of Maharaj Uttanapad, Dhruva Maharaj was not fit to sit either on the throne or on his father's lap. In other words, according to his stepmother, he could not be declared king. Dhruva Maharaj's determination, therefore, was to become king of a planet exalted even beyond that possessed by Lord Brahmā, the greatest of all demigods. Dhruva Maharaj indirectly informed the great sage Narada that there are four kinds of human spirit: the Brahminical spirit, the Kshatriya spirit, the Vaishya spirit, and the Shudra spirit. The spirit of one caste is not applicable to the members of another. The philosophical spirit enunciated by Narada Muni might have been suitable for a Brahmin spirit, but it was not suitable for Kshatriya. Dhruva frankly admitted that he was lacking in Brahminical humility and was therefore unable to accept the philosophy of Narada Muni. The statements of Dhruva Maharaj indicate that unless a child is trained according to his tendency, there is no possibility of his developing his particular spirit. It was the duty of the spiritual master or teacher to observe the psychological movement of a particular boy and thus train him in a particular occupational duty. Dhruva Maharaj, having already been trained in the Kshatriya spirit, would not accept a Brahminical philosophy. In America, we have practical experience of this incompatibility of the Brahminical and Kshatriya temperaments. The American boys who have simply been trained as Shudras are not at all fit to fight in battle. Therefore, when they are called to join the military, they refuse because they do not have Kshatriya spirit. This is a cause of great dissatisfaction in society. That the boys do not have the Kshatriya spirit does not mean that they are trained in Brahminical qualities. They are trained as Shudras, and thus, in frustration, they are becoming hippies. However, as soon as they enter the Krishna conscious movement being started in America, they are trained to meet the Brahminical qualifications, even though they have fallen to the lowest conditions as Shudras. In other words, since the Krishna consciousness movement is open for everyone, people in general can attain the Brahminical qualifications. This is the greatest need at the present moment. For now, there are actually no brahmanas or kshatriyas, but only some vaishyas and, for the most part, shudras. The classification of society into brahmins, kshatriyas, vaishyas, and shudras is very scientific. In the human social body, the brahmins are considered the head, the kshatriyas are the arms, the vaishyas are the belly, and the shudras are the legs. At the present moment, the body has legs and a belly, but there are no arms or head, and therefore society is topsy-turvy. It is necessary to reestablish the Brahminical qualifications in order to raise the fallen human society to the highest standard of spiritual consciousness. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manubhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Karamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpadruvyascha Kripa Sindhuvyevacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay. All right, so I thought we would start with a little bit of analysis. Srila Prabhupada gets into a number of issues here that I feel like took me a long time to kind of sort through and work out. Answering questions like, what is being a Brahmin versus being Brahminical? If you have a particular varna that's not the varna of a Brahmin, is it possible to become Brahminical? If you do become Brahminical, does that then make you a Brahmin? What is Brahminical society? And things of this nature. So the first thing to understand is that someone's nature is made up of guna and karma. So Prabhupada has described that each varna is ruled by a particular guna. The Brahmins are ruled by goodness, Kshatriyas by passion, the Vaishyas by a combination of passion and ignorance, and Shudras by ignorance. So what he's saying in this purport is that everyone is born with a particular inclination. So there's a innate mentality and nature that's already there, and then that nature should be trained accordingly. So if you have someone like Dhruva Maharaj, who's born into a Kshatriya family, has that Kshatriya spirit, and then he's trained as a Kshatriya, and given and trained in Brahminical qualifications, then he actually becomes a ksatriya. And then that's a very strong position to be in. And as we see here, there's no second guessing that, there's no backing away from that. He says, I can't accept this Brahminical position, that your message that you're giving me, because it's contrary to my nature. So the flip side of that he describes here as well, that when you have people in the Western society who maybe have a Brahminical or Kshatriya spirit, when they don't have that sort of training, they become frustrated. And there are many places where Prabhupada describes our educational institutions as being slaughterhouses, right? And we can understand why, because it kills a Kshatriya or Brahminical spirit due to the sort of training that one would receive from these sort of educational, these schools and so forth. So the result is that we had this hippie movement that he was observing when he came to the West. And these were people who, more than anything, it wasn't a movement towards something, it was a movement away from something. And these were often very intelligent individuals, often came from, very good families, good backgrounds, and they chose this alternate path because they could see that things weren't the way that they should be, that this somehow what was being propagated as mainstream society was not very healthy, and they didn't want to be a part of that. They didn't know exactly what they wanted to be a part of, but they didn't want to be a part of that. So they created this counterculture. So the interesting thing is that when Prabhupada came to the West, when he was coming here, he never imagined that he would be working with society's dropouts and druggies, right? He thought he was going to come to the West and he'd be working with the upper echelon of society. He'd be working with academics, with politicians, with high society, influential people. And so he had this idea that his society that he would create, the devotees that he would make here in the West, that they would function as the Brahminical head for all of society. Now, of course, Krishna had his own arrangement and gave him the hippies instead. And when Prabhupada got to work with these people, he could understand that maybe he needed to reevaluate how this was going to work. And that because he's working with all different sorts of people and all sorts of different natures, he understood that there was actually a need for varnashram. Everyone needed to be engaged according to their nature. And, simply giving the Brahminical message wasn't going to be adequate for everyone. But even so, there's a need for Brahminical society. So what is Brahminical society? Having studied Prabhupada's books for some time, there's three things that really stood out for me in what he teaches about Brahminical society. First of all, Brahminical society is where the Brahmins and the cows are protected. Second of all, it's Brahminical society means a society that's headed by Brahmins. The Brahmins are independent, meaning that they have no higher authority, and due to their detachment, they can simply see the truth and give the truth without being corrupted by other influences and And therefore, there needs to be someone who's very detached at the head of the society. And then the third point is that the members of the society cultivate brahminical qualities. So something else interesting that Prabhupada says in this purport is that that Dhruva Maharaj, or really that the development of kshatriyas involves brahminical training, right? So, and he says that in his society that everyone, even those who are shudras, they can become brahminical as well due to having a certain training that's provided by the Krishna consciousness movement. So we've described a little bit about what a brahmana is, and actually different texts describe a brahman. There's descriptions in Bhagavatam, there's descriptions in Mahabharata. If we look at Bhagavad Gita, verse 1842 describes brahminical qualities as being peaceful, self-control, austere, pure, tolerant, honest, in knowledge, wisdom, and religiousness. So these are qualities that anyone can cultivate, regardless of their particular nature. So our natures are basically what they are. We can't really fix them. They're like a basic constitution. But what we can do is we can purify our natures, and developing brahminical qualities gives us an opportunity to do that. So when we become brahminical, we will maintain our nature. We may have different varnas depending on our proclivities, our activities, our mentality. But the brahminical nature is what's cultivated in ashram, right? So varna, our nature is expressed in varna, but our brahminical qualities are expressed through our ashram. And even the term ashram itself is at the root of ashram is ashraya. We tend to think of an ashram as, the place that the devotees live that's attached to the temple, and, but all of our homes, regardless of what stage of life that we're in, we should consider it to be an ashram. And ashram is rooted in the word ashraya, which means to take shelter. So that means that in every stage of our life, we are taking shelter of Krishna, and we cultivate these qualities, which are very compatible, highly compatible with spiritual life, and assist us in developing our relationship with Krishna. So that's the analysis I wanted to do. So I wanted to get into a little bit of the, there's so many things that are going on here. I felt very torn in preparing what to focus on, because there's so many beautiful points that are coming out here. But the way that we see this in action here is that Dhruva Maharaj he's refuting Narada Muni's instruction, but he's doing so in a way that stays true to his nature. And he's committed to serving the Lord from the platform that he's on, where he is in this body, in this life. And there's something that's very profound about that. And there's a verse from the first canto, Atapum vir dvijashreshas varnashma vibhagasha swanasitasya dharmasya samsiddhir haritoshanam, which says that the highest perfection that one can achieve by discharging one's duties, prescribed duties according to Varna and Ashram, is to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that's really what he's trying to do. So if we are able to be true to ourselves, be true to our nature, and serve the Lord from that position, things will go so much smoother and so much easier for us. We will actually be much more peaceful in following our nature than we are going to be in rejecting our nature or saying, you know, I'm not the body, Prabhu, and trying to act in someone else's nature and somewhere else's role. And not only will our lives go smoother, but society will run more smoothly. When people are actually performing work or activities according to what suits them, the result is tremendous, right? It really is beautiful. So, you know, we should take a leaf out of Dhruva Maharaj's book and, you know, see how we can do that in our own lives. But one other thing I wanted to point out about this verse is that, let me find this one line. It's two lines actually from the purport. I'll just read them one more time. The philosophical spirit enunciated by Narada Muni might have been suitable for a Brahmin spirit, but it was not suitable for a Kshatriya. Dhruva frankly admitted that he was lacking in Brahminical humility and was therefore unable to accept the philosophy of Narada Muni. So the flip side of this is that it's sort of ironic, actually, because him admitting that he doesn't have the humility of a Brahmin is actually him being humble, right? Yeah, so I mean, that in and of itself is very profound. I think we have all experienced at some point this sort of situation that Dhruva Maharaj is in, where he's being given an instruction and it doesn't ring true to you, to your nature, and to what you know to be true for you. And you know, I feel like this is one of those reasons that it's so important to understand our nature and to understand where we're at in developing our Krishna consciousness. Because, you know, I've just seen it so many times that someone comes along with what they're saying might even be true, and you know, perfectly applicable for you know, one sort of person, but maybe they lack in that certain discretion that allows them to differentiate between who should hear this message and who should not. And you know, and so sometimes they're giving the right advice to the wrong person, or the other way around. So I personally have very much benefited from understanding different psychologies through understanding Varna and related sciences to the Vedas, through understanding Ayurveda and such. But even through using tools outside of that, like using the Enneagram and Myers-Briggs, different ways of mapping personalities, it has allowed me to get certain clarity on my own nature. But even beyond that, what it's given me is the ability to recognize others' natures. And when you're able to recognize someone's nature for what it is, it gives you the space to be able to appreciate that nature. It can be very, even if it's seemingly completely opposite from our own nature, there's a lot of there's a lot that can give us. It can really enhance our relationships. And if we do find ourselves in a position where we are giving advice to someone, whether it's as a friend or sort of shiksha advice to a younger devotee, or whatever the case may be, it is important that we are thinking about these things. Like, what is their nature? What are they ready to hear? And instead of, often I have a tendency to comment, yeah, but what is the absolute truth? And I think this is also kind of where people get a little bewildered about Prabhupada's instructions, because we'll see that he'll say different things at different times on the same topic. And, it's going to be like, well, which one is it? Should we do this or should we do that? But if we look at it through this lens of he's giving different instructions at different times, it should be applied according to our nature and where we're at in our spiritual development. So I think that's the main thing that I wanted to say today. So we can move on to having some discussion. I didn't have any specific questions to ask you today, but I did want to have discussion based on these ideas of understanding our nature, understanding the other natures of others, and how that might affect our communication with others and our ability to relate to others.